Part 12. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 111. The strongest part is often also the biggest fatal weakness. The human brain controls all behaviors. The military headquarters commands hundreds of thousands of troops. Just one bullet or one shell can kill one person and paralyze an army. Therefore, the most dangerous and weakest link on Su Ming's side is Su Ming himself as the commander-in-chief. If the indigenous coalition was a little smarter and sent hundreds of thousands of bees to attack Su Ming would not even have a chance to escape and would die immediately. Even if the indigenous coalition was not smart and could not think of the decapitation strategy, just like today, they were fighting and turning around, and a small number of bees came out to besiege, which was enough for Su Ming to bear. Oh my God! Thinking of the scene of being stung by hundreds of thousands of bees, Su Ming got goosebumps all over his body and shivered subconsciously. Oh my God, oh my God! Itchy, itchy. The macaw not only imitated the language, but also imitated Su Ming's shivering movements, trembling a few times in a similar way, screaming strangely and shaking his feathers all over his body. There were many dead bees trapped in their feathers, and when they shook, a large number of dead bees fell down like rain. Shut up, you're shaking off lice, Su Ming glared at them, then dragged his chin and rolled his eyes around. Actually, there is not no way out. The biggest weakness of the bee coalition is its low intelligence. So far, even after today's defeat, there is no sign that the whole army will be dispatched, so it is equivalent to abolishing their own martial arts and giving up their biggest advantage, quantity. If Su Ming is willing to work hard, subdue some bees today, kill a team of coalition tomorrow, and slowly consume the opponent's strength, the coalition can be destroyed by this. The problem is that it is too time-consuming to do this, and it will definitely not be done within 10 days or half a month. Su Ming only took a few days off and brought several protected animals from the zoo out. If he doesn't go back after half a month, the zoo will definitely report him missing. At that time, the police will definitely bring big wolfhounds to search the mountain. It would not be a good thing if they accidentally found him here. Others don't say anything. If he is missing for more than 10 days, he will definitely notify his mother. His mother is in poor health. Don't let her die in a hurry. That would be like forgetting your mother after having a wife. I think I said something strange. What should I do? Decapitation. Got it? Su Ming thought about it and his eyes lit up. The bee coalition would not use the decapitation tactic, so why not use it himself? Although the queen bee of the coalition is not as important as his commander, she is also the leader of the bee colony after all, and has a significant impact on the combat effectiveness of the entire bee colony. As long as the queen bee of each bee colony in the coalition is killed, the combat effectiveness of the coalition will immediately drop sharply. Maybe many native bees will directly defect to the Soviet army with the queen bee because they have lost their leader. Su Ming doesn't think bees have any racial pride or moral integrity to die rather than surrender. For most animals, whoever feeds you is your mother is not a derogatory term, but a law of survival. At that time, with his own assistance, it may only take a few days to solve the problem of the coalition forces and conquer them all. After having the ability of animal friends, Su Ming mostly encountered solitary animals. He was used to crushing them directly with his mental power, and rarely encountered the situation of being crushed by the opponent, so that he didn't even think of targeting and precise attacking for a while. It's itchy, it's itchy. The two macaws were still shaking their claws, and Su Ming pinched their necks and pulled them out with one hand each. You two, follow me to the front, find out the enemy's situation, and find out the specific location of the queen bee. Saker, stand by in the air. If you want to implement the anti-decapitation strategy, the first step is to find out the location of the enemy queen bee, otherwise it is like finding a needle in a haystack to find 9 queen bees in the huge 100 Flowers Valley and under the heavy protection of countless bees. Greifang took a few steps and was about to catch up. Su Ming quickly released a spiritual force. You stay still. Greifang's thin milk hair could not withstand the attack of a large group of bees. Not to mention it, even if its father, the Wolf King, was surrounded by so many bees, he would still die. The biological world has a wonderful law. One thing can defeat another. The wolf dared to fight against the Saker falcon, and it was even more victorious against the macaw. However, it had no way to deal with the tiny bees. On the contrary, no matter how small the feathered animals were, as long as they had feathers, they were not afraid of bees and restrained themselves. Leaving the grove of the queen bee's base camp, Su Ming led the 3 bodyguards to the depths of the valley. The 2 macaws were too big and generally did not fly much. They jumped and followed on both sides. The Saker falcon circled overhead to observe the overall situation. Not far away, they approached the territory of the coalition forces. Just watching from a distance, Su Ming's heart skipped a beat. It was a large forest, not to say that it was endless, but it was almost endless. In the forest, dense beehives were like fruits, hanging on the branches. From a distance, this forest was just like the black forest where witches lived in the magic world, completely shrouded by a black mist, and filled with countless bees everywhere. How many of them are there? Su Ming's scalp was numb when he saw it, and he didn't dare to get too close, but from such a distance, he couldn't see where the queen bee of the coalition was. Fortunately, there is no shortage of traitors in the world. Su Ming lay in the grass and used his mental power to control a few coalition bees passing by, asking them to go to the forest to investigate. That forest was dozens of times larger than the small forest where the Soviet army was located. It was like a small forest. After the traitor bees flew in, they wandered around as if nothing had happened. After about an hour, they flew back slowly. Even so, they did not find out the location of all the queen bees, and only found 4 large beehives. 4 is 4, kill 1 less. Su Ming lay in the grass, holding a macaw as a shield, and gave orders to Heidongking, follow the bee insider, carry out targeted strikes, and behead the queen bee. The insider returned to the big forest again, flew about 20 meters into the forest and finally stopped under an old elm tree. On the branch of the elm tree, there was a basketball-sized beehive, which was more than twice as large as other beehives. Obviously, there was a queen bee living in it. Now, get it, Su Ming issued a beheading order to Heidongking. The Saker falcon let out a long roar, folded its wings tightly behind it, and dived diagonally downward in mid-air. Like a sharp arrow, it plunged into the forest and rushed towards the direction of the big beehive. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 112. The speed of the Saker falcon was extremely fast. When it rushed into the forest, the bees in the forest had not reacted yet. In just a few seconds, the Saker falcon found the big beehive. With a little force on its claws, it grabbed the big beehive in its claws. With a flap of its wings, it was about to fly into the air. Well done, Su Ming was very excited. He waved his hands happily, as if he had seen success in sight. It was also bad luck for the macaw. This time, the fist hit the belly of the macaw, which was used as a shield by Su Ming. The macaw was accidentally injured by a punch. The huge body swayed twice like a tumbler, stepped back 2 steps, and then fell on the ground with its back facing the sky, shaking its claws and shouting in a weird voice, "Oh my God, I got hit." Su Ming. However, what happened next was not as smooth as expected. The Saker falcon seemed to be in trouble. When the Saker falcon dives, it is very fast. Even if it is flying under normal circumstances, no bee can catch up with it. It is far ahead of those bees. But when it stops in the air and grabs the hive with its claws, it will inevitably have a short pause. After grabbing the hive, the Saker falcon must accelerate again to take off, so there is another short pause time, not to mention that the hive itself has weight. In this instant, the swarm of bees in the woods is boiling. The forest is full of bees, and there are traces of bee activities in every inch of space. The Saker falcon can shake off the bees chasing it, but as long as it is still in the forest, it is still surrounded by a sea of bees. When it paused, the bees that were closer to it suddenly fell on the feathers of the Saker falcon. Almost in the blink of an eye, the originally handsome Saker falcon turned into a disgusting-looking thing, with a dense layer of bees crawling on its body, looking like it was wearing a gray outer robe. Although bees are small, they are also heavy. 1 or 2 bees can't feel anything, but hundreds of bees are different. A small amount adds up to a large number of bees. The speed of the Saker falcon suddenly stagnates, and its body is even pulled down. The Saker falcon spread its wings vigorously and shook violently. What a rain of flying bees! The dense bees were shaken away like hidden weapons, but more bees immediately rushed up and filled the position again, crawling all over the Saker falcon. The Saker falcon was covered with bees and had nowhere to stand. The other bees also changed their strategy and drilled into the hive. In the blink of an eye, the hive became fatter and was covered with bees. The bees also flapped their wings vigorously to pull the hive down to prevent the Saker falcon from taking away their king. Not far away, there were more bee swarms coming from all directions. Su Ming was dumbfounded. These were still bees, but they were just a group of green-headed flies seeing shit. In just a few breaths, several thick layers of bees crawled on the body of the Saker falcon again. At first, the Saker falcon could still spread its wings and struggle a few times, but as more and more bees lay on it, it was difficult for the Saker falcon to even open its wings. After finally opening them once, a large number of bees would rush into its armpits. This was terrible. The Saker falcon couldn't even move its wings and fell directly to the ground. Some bees were smashed away, but more bees rushed back from all directions. Soon, from Su Ming's perspective, the outline of the Saker falcon could no longer be seen. He could only see a big black ball on the ground in the forest in the distance, like a small hill, and it was constantly growing. The surface of the hill kept wriggling, which was very disgusting. The Saker falcon was indeed a fierce creature. Even when it fell to the ground, its 2 claws tightly grasped the beehive and refused to let go, which immediately attracted more bees. If this goes on, not to mention the Saker falcon, even the warcraft will not be able to get away with it. Even if it is not stung to death by bees, it will be crushed to death, suffocated to death, or nauseated to death. Seeing this, Su Ming no longer cared about beheading or not. At this point, the life of the Saker falcon was the most important. If something happened to the Saker falcon, he would not have to make any targeted strike and beheading plans. Director Song would be the first to implement a targeted strike on himself. Killing or losing a national protected animal is not a big deal, but it is definitely not a small matter. Moreover, it was he who took the initiative to take it out of the zoo. Besides, the Saker falcon was loyal to the emperor all the way, and he did not provoke anyone. It was miserable enough for a tiger to be bullied by a dog in the plain, and it would be too tragic if it was bullied to death. Let go of the beehive, come back quickly. Su Ming quickly gave the Saker falcon an order. At the same time, the big parrot holding the shield rushed forward a long distance, as close to the woods as possible, and then used mental power to cooperate and shook off some of the bees that surrounded the Saker falcon. After receiving Su Ming's order, the Saker falcon sent out its claws and threw away the beehive. Without this big burden, the pressure on the Saker falcon was immediately reduced a lot, and most of the coalition bees in the forest were also attracted to the beehive, guarding it tightly, and no longer climbing on the Saker falcon. The Saker falcon fluttered a few times, but unexpectedly did not fly. There were so many bees pressing on it that they simply condensed into a thick wall. Su Ming quickly sent mental power into it as if he was risking his life. Bang, 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 the bees blocking the Saker falcon were like being blown up by small bombs, and flew away in large pieces. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Saker falcon flapped its wings vigorously twice, let out an eagle's cry, and finally soared into the sky. However, the bee coalition seemed unwilling to let the Saker falcon go. Behind the Saker falcon, it was like a long dragon rushing out of the forest, chasing the Saker falcon. Saker falcon, the king of the sky, had a flying skill that was far ahead of the bees. After leaving the shackles of the bee colony, it flew faster and faster, looking up to the sky, like an arrow piercing the clouds, and rushed straight to the sky. The bee colony below was thrown farther and farther away, and the bees could not fly that high. At a height of dozens of meters, the strong wind could blow them away, so the chasing bee colony finally dispersed and returned to the forest. Saker falcon shook its feathers in the air, shaking out many bees hidden in its feathers like lice, and they were blown away by the strong wind before they landed. Seeing this, Su Ming breathed a sigh of relief, hugged the parrot and quickly retreated to a safe position, and then sent out a mental force to let the Saker falcon land. "Are you okay?" As soon as the Saker falcon landed, Su Ming threw the parrot aside, held the Saker falcon and looked at it over and over again, confirming that the guy was not seriously injured and only lost a few feathers, and then he felt completely relieved. The decapitation plan completely failed. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Bai. Chapter 113. In the Soviet base camp, the queen bee and Arguza were buzzing with a large group of Soviet bees and wasps, accepting Su Ming's lecture. Su Ming walked back and forth with his hands behind his back, muttering, "Blood lesson. Lesson, lesson. Bloody, bloody." Two macaws stood on the treetops, chirping and mimicking Su Ming's appearance, with their wings behind their backs, their big bellies sticking out, and their heads nodding, as if they were lecturing the bees. The key issue now is, Su Ming had been with animals for a long time and developed a habit of talking to himself. Before he said a word, he suddenly shut up and looked up at the parrot. The parrot was also looking at him, as if waiting for him to finish speaking, and then they would learn. Su Ming rolled his eyes and thought to himself that the key was that the coalition forces were too numerous, to a terrifying degree. Even the fastest Saker falcon could not catch and kill the local queen bee before being surrounded, let alone these two slow and strong parrots. At least the Saker falcon could escape, but these two guys went in and were just serving food. Is it only possible to do it bit by bit? This will take a lot of time. Or go back to the city and buy the anti-honey suits that beekeepers use, but this takes too much time, and judging from the attack of the Saker falcon today, the coalition bee swarm may crush him to death with its weight. The Saker falcon was slightly injured, but it did not affect its combat effectiveness. This guy flew around in the sky and caught a sparrow from somewhere. He was eating it until it was bloody and the sparrow's intestines were pulled out. Seeing the sparrow, Su Ming suddenly had an idea and shouted at the Saker falcon, "Stop eating! Stop eating! Stop eating!" The two parrots waited for a long time and finally heard Su Ming talking, and hurriedly imitated him. The Saker falcon was stunned, raised his head and looked at Su Ming blankly, with half of the sparrow intestine hanging on his mouth. He sucked it into his mouth and waited for Su Ming to lecture him. "You forced me to do this. You are not qualified to use human wave tactics with me." Su Ming snapped his fingers at the Saker falcon, "Go, catch birds for me, any birds. They must be alive. Catch birds. Catch birds. They must be alive. They must be alive. What the hell, you two should not be idle. You are guys with wings after all. You jump on the ground all day long. Do you have the nerve to do that? Follow and help." Su Ming turned around and pointed at the two parrots and said, The parrot also pointed at Su Ming with its wings. How dare you, how dare you? Go help, go help. Damn it, I told you to help. Su Ming strode up like a reactionary warlord and slapped the two guys. The macaw sisters' heads tilted after being hit, and 2 hairs on their heads flew off. They finally understood what was going on, and quickly jumped and followed the saker falcon out of the woods, spread their wings hard, and flew crookedly into the sky to catch birds together. Everyone take a break, and prepare for war, Su Ming gave the queen bee an order fiercely. Next, the 2 macaws kept sending back all kinds of birds. A tiny sparrow, a black crow, a magpie that kept chirping, a small and exquisite skylark, a delicate thrush, and even a large heron, a national protected animal. The heron is a water bird, and it is unknown where the saker falcon caught it from. After being left behind, the heron looked at the large group of birds in front of it that had nothing to do with it, and was very confused. Sometimes the macaw escorted it alone, and sometimes it drove back a large group of birds directly like driving ducks. Once again, 2 parrots actually teamed up to escort back an eagle. The eagle was dejected, with scratches all over his body, and it was obviously at a big loss. It is estimated that during the capture process, the eagle wanted to resist and was severely taught a lesson by the saker falcon. Every time a bird was escorted, Su Ming used his mental power to educate it, and kept instilling ideas such as being honest and obedient is the only way out, and helping the party and the country, I can't treat you unfairly, into the heads of the birds. When it was almost night, the capture work was finally coming to an end. A total of nearly 400 birds of different species and sizes filled the treetops and branches, black and dense, but did not make any sound. Next to the big beehive at the highest point, the saker falcon looked at the flock of birds below silently with a stern look. Su Ming stood with his hands behind his back, looking at his newly formed air force with satisfaction. 2 macaws followed him on both sides, one on the left and one on the right, with their heads held high. Everyone, listen to the command. Su Ming's mental power was released. Swoosh! Hundreds of birds folded their wings at the same time, stood on the treetops with their chests held high, waiting for Su Ming's order. Su Ming strode out of the woods, slowly raised his arm, and pointed to the dark woods in front of him. Direction, right in front. Target, the beehive of the bee coalition. Everyone is ready. As soon as the voice fell, hundreds of birds in the small woods behind him flapped their wings and took off at the same time, hovering in the air and gathering without dispersing. Above the woods, a black cloud seemed to suddenly appear. Su Ming walked out of the black cloud like a legendary wizard, pointed his arm at the woods in front, pressed it down hard, and made a beheading gesture. Everyone attack. If you encounter resistance, kill them without mercy. The saker falcon let out an eagle cry that pierced the sky, leading the flock of birds to charge. Black clouds swept across the sky, drifting towards the distant Bee Alliance base camp, and shrouded the woods. The black clouds pressed down on the city and threatened to destroy it. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 114. This was a battle without suspense. Birds are natural enemies of bees. Even the weakest sparrows have an overwhelming advantage against bees. Before the bird's power is exhausted, no matter how many bees there are, they cannot pose a threat to them. More than 400 flying troops of various birds rushed into the woods and launched a one-sided massacre against the bee coalition, which was 1,000 times their number. Just 1 hour later, the bee coalition in the big woods had been completely defeated. 10 large beehives with queen bees living in them were carried by the flock of birds to Su Ming and neatly arranged in a row on the ground. Considering that the current bee coalition will become his subordinates in the future, since the decapitation tactic has been successful, there is no need to kill ordinary bees. Su Ming called off the troops and asked the flock of birds to temporarily withdraw from the woods and stay near the beehive to prevent the bee coalition from snatching it. The 2 macaws pecked and bit with their mouths, and easily tore open the beehive, revealing the queen bees inside. Ordinary queen bees and Su Ming's queen bees are not on the same level at all. The largest of the 10 coalition queen bees is no longer than a cigarette box, and the smallest is about the size of a USB flash drive. Compared with them, the Soviet queen bees are like giants and dwarfs. Su Ming used his mental power to test them. These wild queen bees really have no intelligence. Their reaction to mental power is very weak, and they are not as evolved as the ordinary bees of the Soviet army. In this case, he is not going to keep these queen bees and bury hidden dangers for the future, so he asked the Soviet queen bee, "I'll give them to you. How are you going to deal with them?" The queen bee opened two small jaws and clicked a few times. The jaws of ordinary bees are almost invisible. Although this queen bee has grown some jaws because of mental power, they are still very small. It doesn't look fierce when waving them, but it feels a bit ridiculous. "Eat it," Su Ming was slightly surprised. The queen bee eats royal jelly and is a vegetarian animal. When did this guy change his diet and start eating meat? Several slightly larger wasps buzzed over and hovered over the queen bee of the coalition. Su Ming then understood what the queen bee meant. It was not to eat the queen bee itself, but to let the wasps eat the queen bee. Before Su Ming came, wasps played an important role in the battle with the bee coalition. Although they did not directly participate in all the battles, they firmly guarded the hive where the queen bee was. If it were not for them, the bee coalition, which had an absolute advantage in numbers, might have raided the queen bee's nest and killed the queen bee. In the bee colony, the queen bee has the highest status and grows up eating royal jelly. Therefore, the queen bee has the highest nutritional value. The Sioux army queen bee let the strong wasps eat these hostile queen bees as a reward to them. The division of labor in the wasp colony is more complicated than that of the bee. There is also a queen bee, and under the queen bee there are drones and worker bees. When Su Ming subdued this group of wasps, he did not have enough experience in using mental power. He killed their queen bee due to negligence. Later, in order to ensure the supply of big blue bees, he gave all the royal jelly to the bee colony so that the bee colony could produce a queen bee as soon as possible to recover its vitality, but he ignored the construction of the wasp colony. Therefore, this group of wasps has not yet produced a new queen bee. Although the wasp colony originally had only a few hundred wasps, it was in a state of dying one less wasp because it had no queen bee. After several fierce battles, there are now less than 100 wasps left in the wasp colony, which is in danger. Sujun's queen bee means to give all these hostile queen bees and the royal jelly in the hive to the wasp colony, so that the wasp colony can produce a new wasp queen as soon as possible, and the wasp colony can continue to grow in the future and avoid the danger of extinction. If there were tens of thousands of wasps at that time, perhaps Su Ming would not need to help, and the queen bee could eat away the bee coalition bit by bit. "Hey, you're quite smart. Let's do it." After getting Su Ming's permission, the flying hornets carried the queen bees of the coalition and the broken honeycombs full of royal jelly back to their nests. Gozi had been following Su Ming all the time, busying himself, and also got a queen bee of the coalition and most of the honeycomb as a reward. This guy usually behaved well in front of Su Ming, looking harmless, but now he showed his fierce side, pounced on the queen bee the size of a lighter, bit off the waist of the queen bee with a snap, and gnawed it quickly. In the opposite forest, the scattered bee coalition showed signs of gathering again. Their queen was captured by Su Ming, and the remaining bees probably wanted to come to rescue, but Su Ming had hundreds of birds waiting for them. The bee coalition without a leader was purely a mess, unable to organize an effective attack. After several consecutive charges, they were easily defeated by Su Ming's flock of birds. In the afternoon of the next day, the queen bee sent a message that a new queen was finally born in the hornet colony. Probably inheriting the characteristics of the Soviet queen bee, the new queen wasp was about 10 centimeters long. Although it was not as terrifying as the queen wasp, it was much larger than the ordinary queen wasp. On the chest of the queen wasp, there was a large area of dark black like black crystal. On the round waist and abdomen, there were circles of dark and strange patterns, the color was as deep as ink. The darker the black on the body of this black-chested wasp, the more toxic it is. The patterns on the body of ordinary wasps are only dark brown, and the newly born queen wasp obviously has a toxicity far beyond its peers. It can be predicted that the little wasps born by this queen in the future will also have amazing toxicity. Su Ming used his mental power to test it. As expected, the intelligence of the wasp queen was higher than that of ordinary wasps. It was at the same level as the newly born honeybee queen at that time, and they could communicate in a simple way. In view of this, he simply stayed in the valley for another day and used his mental power to nourish the new wasp queen. In this way, he unintentionally solved the troubles of the honeybee queen. The biggest problem of the honeybee queen was that she could not find someone to communicate with and felt lonely. Now, the wasp queen was equal to it in social status and had intelligence that was not inferior to it, just right to keep it company. Su Ming was originally worried that the two queens would have conflicts or something because of their different races. Unexpectedly, after just half a day, the two queens actually commanded their subordinates to move their hives together, and also built a passage between the exits of each other's hives, so that they could directly enter and exit each other's bedrooms, just like a good girlfriend. Well, that's very good. You two sisters should get along well with each other. As the saying goes, a harmonious family brings prosperity, Su Ming said earnestly. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 115. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Ming felt that it was a bit inappropriate. This sounded strange. I am not opening a harem. What is the meaning of two sisters? What is the saying of a harmonious family brings prosperity? Anyway, that's the meaning. Just understand the spirit. In order to distinguish you, I will give you a name. Su Ming scratched his head and pointed at the queen bee. Well, you are a bee, so you will be called the queen of honey from now on. As for you, he pointed at the queen wasp. You are a black-chested wasp, so you will be called the queen of chest. This name is too romantic, so it's better to call you the queen of bees. The queen of honey and the queen of bees raised their heads, and their four big compound eyes looked at Su Ming together. At the same time, they waved their molted little wings to indicate that they understood. Su Ming had been delayed by the matter of the bee colony for 4 days in the mountains. He asked for 3 days off, plus the weekend, a total of 5 days. Counting the days, he had to go back to the zoo. After losing the queen bee, the coalition bee colony was no longer a big deal. In just 1 day, thousands of bees had defected and came to surrender. The remaining coalition forces no longer attacked and wandered around the valley like headless flies. As one side grew, the other side fell. The Soviet army had an extra queen bee, and the bird team could stay here temporarily to help. The rest of the things did not need Su Ming to worry about. They could be handed over to the two queen bees to handle. They would gradually encroach on the original coalition territory and troops. It was only a matter of time before they occupied the entire valley. Before the sun set, Su Ming took 3 birds and a wolf and walked out of the canyon along the original route and left the valley. I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home, the 2 parrots kept calling on the road. Not only the 2 of them, but also Heidongking and Huiya were also dawdling on the way back, looking reluctant. After being locked up in a cage for a long time, it was a rare opportunity to run wild. It was like a holiday, and I always felt that time passed very quickly. Stop making trouble. If you want to come out later, there will be plenty of opportunities. With Su Ming leading the team, there were no other accidents along the way. After dark, they still camped. Heidongking caught another wild rabbit for Huiya to practice. After the experience of dealing with mountain rats last time, Huiya killed the little rabbit neatly. When seeing the little rabbit's neck being bitten off by Huiya, Su Ming still felt a little bit reluctant, but soon, after the aroma of roasted rabbit meat wafted up, that bit of hypocrisy was gone with the wind. Huiya saw blood twice. Although he didn't grow much, his temperament, or mentality, had obvious changes. When he was around Su Ming, he was still like a little pet, but when he acted alone, there was already a fierce and cold taste in his eyes. At night, Huiya also joined the work of keeping watch, lying on the side of Su Ming's tent, squinting his eyes and pretending to sleep. With this group of animals keeping watch, Su Ming naturally didn't have to worry about anything and soon fell asleep peacefully. In the middle of the night, Su Ming was drowsy, and suddenly felt his face a little wet. He opened his eyes and saw Huiya licking his face. In the woods in the distance, there was a rustling sound of footsteps. "Is there anyone?" Su Ming woke up immediately, grabbed the dagger, crawled out of the tent, hid in the nearby grass, and stared at the direction of the sound vigilantly. He was a little confused. Who would walk in the deep mountains and old forests in the middle of the night? The night is the world of animals. Even experienced old hunters will not walk around in the mountains after dark. This is very dangerous. Could it be a wild man? Legend has it that someone once found traces of wild men in Kinling Mountains, and the country also sent a special team to look for them, but in the end, no wild man was found, and the matter was left unresolved. If it is really a wild man, it is a rare thing. No matter what, you have to see it with your own eyes to be satisfied. Su Ming is also a very bold person. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and slowly crawled forward. At the same time, while communicating with the three birds with his mental power, the Saker falcon was perched on a tree above his head, motionless, and the two macaws gathered together, a few dozen meters ahead, and it seemed that they had discovered each other. However, a few flashlight beams flashed by the edge of a stream ahead, making Su Ming's good wish of finding wild men come to nothing, because wild men don't use flashlights. "Catch the thief! Catch the thief! Let me go! Let me go!" The parrot's strange call suddenly broke the tranquility of the mountain at night, and the sound came from the flashlight. "What's going on?" Su Ming boldly moved closer, and at the same time asked Erguza to fly over and observe closely. In the weak moonlight, a row of people were seen walking along the stream into the mountain. Judging from their dress, these people were definitely not ordinary hikers. They were all wearing uniform and neat mountaineering clothes, carrying large and small bags behind them, and several of them even carried long sticks behind them, which looked like guns. There was a tall and strong man in the middle of the team, carrying an iron cage half the size of a man on his back, with the two macaws stuffed in the cage. "If you scream again, I'll shoot you both." Someone took out a pistol and hit the macaws in the cage twice. In his other hand, he also held an iron cage. According to the feedback from Erguza, there was a monkey in the cage, with light golden fur all over its body, but its face was white. It should be a national first-class protected animal, the Kinling golden monkey. Su Ming suddenly realized that he had encountered poachers. In the poaching team, the leader turned around, laughed strangely at the back, and said, "Chien Lao Er, if you shoot them, don't blame me for deducting your dividends. How much are these two parrots worth?" "At most 50,000 or 60,000. We have big business to come. Why do we need to carry these two burdens?" Chien Lao said, a little unhappy. "Burden? Burden," the parrot called out to Chien Lao. Before the leader spoke, the strong man carrying the parrot turned around and sneered, 50,000 or 60,000. "Chien Lao, I think you have been hanging around for so long in vain, you have no vision at all. These two parrots are very smart. If they are trained, they may be sold for 100,000 or 200,000. "So what?" Chien Lao said, unconvinced. "We are here to do big business this time. If we really find the target, the buyer is willing to pay 1.5 million US. 100,000 or 200,000 Chinese yuan is nothing." It is still unclear whether that thing exists. If we can't find it, we will lose money this time. We can at least make back our capital by catching some other animals, someone in the team said. Several people in the team kept talking. The leader was obviously a little impatient and shouted, "Why are you talking so much? Hurry up." The group fell silent again and continued to move forward along the stream into the mountains. From the other party's words, Su Ming judged that they were not guerrillas, but organized poachers. This time they went into the mountains for a special and rare target. My father died at the hands of poachers. Su Ming hated poaching the most. Besides, the two macaws were caught by the other party and had to be rescued. Su Ming lay on the dead leaves and gave instructions to He Dongqing and Huiya, "Follow them and see, don't expose yourself." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 116. This tracking lasted for most of the night. Along the way, Su Ming did not dare to get too close to the other party, so as not to be discovered by the other party. He let the smallest Ergoza follow the other party, and he followed the He Dongqing and Huiya more than 100 meters behind. At the same time, he gave instructions to the two macaws, asking them to stop trembling, so as not to make Qian Lao angry. If they really collapsed, it would be a tragedy. Sometimes I can't stand the stinky mouths of the parrot sisters. I want to strangle them to death, let alone those thieves. The poaching team was obviously well trained. They carried all kinds of equipment and marched quickly all the way, following the stream into the mountains. It was not until about 10 o'clock the next morning that they stopped in front of a large pool. Su Ming lay in the woods on the other side of the river. After dawn, his vision was much better. He could see that there were 6 men in the poaching team, all of whom were Chinese. The leader wore a pair of glasses and looked gentle, while the rest had fierce faces. You can tell at a glance that they were not good people. The sturdy man carrying the parrot cage took off his shirt and took a bath in the stream, revealing his well-developed muscles. The other few people, under the command of the man with glasses, built a small camp and made a fire to cook. The cages containing golden monkeys and macaws were placed in the middle of the camp, and 2 poachers stood guard with rifles. Damn, this is simply a small army of poachers, Su Ming cursed in his heart. After dawn, Su Ming saw the other party's equipment clearly. There were 6 people, and there were 4 semi-automatic rifles alone, all of which were brand new and shiny 56 type. There were probably some firearms such as pistols, and each person had a military dagger tied to his leg. In addition to weapons, other types of field equipment were also quite complete, all high-end goods, and were completely different from the imitations that Su Ming brought from the military supply store. When Su Ming's father was alive, he dealt with poachers more than once, and there were several direct exchanges of fire. The most frustrating thing was the gap in equipment between the two sides. Some of the larger poaching gangs have the secret support of foreign criminal groups behind them. Their equipment is better than that of the national professional teams. They are not afraid of encountering animal protection personnel in the wild. As the party representing justice, animal protection personnel, forest rangers, and forest police can only be equipped with a few Type 54 pistols at most. Once they fight, they will be completely suppressed by poachers, or even killed directly. Su Ming was also preparing to mobilize bees and wasps to help in the battle last night. No matter how strong the firepower is, it can't do anything to a large group of bees. But before calling the bees, his eyelids couldn't help but jump. Behind one of the poachers, there was actually a small flamethrower on his back. What a joke, are they here to poach or to fight? The group of poachers in front of them have such strong firepower that they can completely slaughter a police station without warning. It seems that they are determined to win this time and are even ready to fight with the local police. I don't know what they are going to catch, but they have invested so much money. Su Ming quickly went through all the protected animals in Kinling Mountains in his mind, and it seems that nothing is worth 1.5 million US dollars. Even giant pandas and finless porpoises are not worth so much money, dinosaur eggs are about the same. The strong man was bathing in the water, and Qian Lauer was holding the bear on the shore and said with a strange smile, "Big bear, you must be careful not to let the things in the water bite off the eggs." "What is in the water?" Su Ming slightly poked his head out with a little curiosity. Not far from the poaching camp, there is a cliff several tens of meters high. A waterfall left from the cliff, and a pool of water was formed below. The water in the pool flowed outward to form this stream. However, the stream is less than 1 meter deep and clear to the bottom. It doesn't seem to be dangerous. "Bite your mother," the strong man Big Bear gestured a middle finger to the shore viciously, then took out a round instrument from the pocket of his leather pants, filled some stream water in the instrument, as if testing the stream water. Big Bear stared at the instrument for a while, then waved to the bespectacled man on the shore and said loudly, "Boss, the water quality is the same as the sample, it should be here." "Okay, come up, eat and work," said the bespectacled man. Big Bear went ashore, and the poaching team gathered around the camp to eat. Su Ming looked around curiously. At present, it seems that the only place where valuable creatures may exist is the pool of water created by the waterfall. The pool is not large, less than 100 square meters, at most it is about the same as a 3-bedroom and 1 living room residential house. From a distance, it is dark green like emerald, and should be very deep. In horror movies, monsters such as pythons and water monsters often appear in such pools, but in fact Su Ming knows very well that the larger the animal, the larger the living space it needs. This pool is too small. Even if it is deep, there is no possibility of any large water monster. Could it be a Yangtze alligator? Or a giant salamander? Su Ming thought of several rare animals that might live in the pond. Although these animals were rare, they were not worth $2 million. $200,000 could buy a lot of them on the black market. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Moreover, according to the rules of the black market, these people should be considered mercenaries or hired poachers. The buyer paid $1.5 million mainly to pay for their hard work, and the value of the prey must be more than this money. Apart from dinosaur eggs, Su Ming really couldn't figure out what other animals in the world could be worth this money. Since he couldn't figure it out, Su Ming simply gave up thinking about it. While asking He Dongqing to find some animals nearby that could help, he lay under the dead leaves in the woods and observed the poaching team calmly. Anyway, the other party would definitely give their own answer. The waterfall rushed down and fell into the pool, stirring up waves and jumping. The sound of the gurgling water covered the voices of the poachers on the other side of the river. Everything was calm for more than 10 minutes, and the poachers finally finished their meal. The 3 poachers, including Qian Lauer, stood up and moved their bodies on the spot, then put on simple diving suits, took military daggers, and walked into the water step by step from the edge of the pool. The slope of the pool was very steep. The 3 people just took 2 steps and most of their bodies were submerged in the water. The 3 people dived and rushed to the center of the pool. A few bubbles popped up on the pool, and the 3 people disappeared. The other 3 poachers waited on the shore with guns. After about 4 or 5 minutes, a long string of bubbles suddenly appeared on the water surface in the center of the pool, followed by large waves rising from under the water, as if something was about to emerge from the water. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 117. The monster is out. Su Ming was even more nervous and curious than the poachers at this time, staring at the water from a distance. With a splash, the water splashed everywhere, but the result was disappointing to Su Ming. It was not a water monster at all, but a poaching diver. The poacher popped his head out and gestured to the shore, and it seemed that he had gained nothing. Immediately afterwards, the other two divers also popped their heads out of the pool and gestured the same gesture to the leader, "Boss he. You come up first." The three divers climbed up the shore wetly. "Boss he," said a few words. The three took off their diving suits and exchanged positions with the three people on the shore. The three of them guarded with guns. Boss he took off his glasses, took the other two poachers, put on diving suits and dived into the pool. After a few minutes, the second group of divers also floated to the shore, and it seemed that they also gained nothing. Is the intelligence wrong? Su Ming was simply thinking for the poachers. From their looks, it seemed that they themselves did not know whether the target they wanted to capture existed or not. It was just possible to exist, not necessarily. If there was nothing in the pool, wouldn't these poachers have made a wasted trip? Don't do that. If you make a wasted trip, I will be embarrassed to attack you. After Boss he got ashore, he did not send anyone into the water again, but gathered the other people together to discuss something. Not long after, two of the poachers left the camp and walked into the woods with guns. After a while, two gunshots were heard in the woods. The two poachers came out again, helplessly spread their hands to Boss he, indicating that they had found nothing. Su Ming did not know what they were going to do, so he just watched from a distance without making a sound. He saw Boss he turning around a few times with his hands behind his back, as if he was thinking about something, and then pointed to the cage containing the golden monkey not far away and said a few words. The strong man Dakshin immediately opened the cage, grabbed the monkey's neck with one hand and pulled it out of the cage. The monkey was still alive, being caught by Dakshin, and kept struggling, but Dakshin was very strong and experienced. He grabbed the monkey's neck from behind, and no matter how the monkey tried to bite, it couldn't hurt him. Lauda took out a long climbing rope, tied one end to the monkey's waist, and held the other end in his hand, then nodded to Dakshin. Dakshin grinned, swung his arms, made a throwing motion, and threw the monkey away in an instant. The monkey screamed and drew an arc in the air, and fell into the pool with a splash, splashing a ball of water. Lauda took the rope and quickly pushed the other thieves to the woods next to him, crawled on the ground, and hid motionlessly. After the golden monkey fell into the water, it first fluttered a few times, and then floated to the surface. Mammals are generally born to swim, but they are different in terms of good or bad swimming ability. There is a joke that in Journey to the West, Dog Brother couldn't beat Shaseng in the quicksand river, so he asked Zhu Beiji for help, which shows that pigs are better at swimming than monkeys. Humans are also born to swim. Soon after a baby is born, the first movement it learns is to wave its hands and feet, which is actually the movement of swimming. It's just that many people have never been in contact with water since childhood, and gradually their swimming instincts have degenerated. Coupled with the fear of psychology, they can't learn to swim. Although the golden monkey can swim, this is not a summer escape in the zoo. It was frightened by poachers. After falling into the water, it made a very shrill cry, and swam to the other side of the pool while flopping, trying to escape. The pool is not big. The golden monkey shouted while paddling with its hands and feet, and swam to the shore in a few strokes. Just as the golden monkey was about to go ashore, the climbing rope tied to its waist suddenly shrank back. Lauda, who was holding the rope, pulled it hard in the forest, and the golden monkey fell into the pool again, and was pulled to the center of the pool by the rope. The golden monkey was also very smart. It wanted to untie the climbing rope around its waist, but the poacher tied the knot very professionally. The monkey tried to pull and grab it, but failed to pull it open after several attempts, so it simply gave up and swam in another direction. The result was destined to be futile. When it was about to reach the shore, the climbing rope shook again, and the golden monkey was once again pulled back into the pool by Lauda. After being tossed like this, the golden monkey screamed even more fiercely, almost rolling in the pool, waving its arms like crazy, and Su Ming could hear it clearly from a long distance. Su Ming finally understood what boss he and his men were up to. Since they couldn't find their target in the water, they simply used the golden monkey as bait to lure the target out, just like fishing. The golden monkey made a lot of noise and was not small in size. In the eyes of most carnivores, it was a feast. As long as their target was in the pool or near the pool, they would definitely be startled by the golden monkey and couldn't help but jump out. However, the golden monkey was about the same size as a local dog, and it was estimated to weigh at least 10 pounds. If they used it as bait, how big would the poacher's target be? Could it really be a Yangtze alligator or something? The monkey called and fluttered in the water for a long time, but there was no movement in the pool. The monkey probably realized that it was doomed today, so it stopped swimming around and climbed onto a rock under the waterfall and squatted, curled up, staring at the surroundings in fear and despair, and occasionally made two sharp squeaks. Sounds, which might be a cry for help. The two macaws on the shore had been holding back for a long time, and finally couldn't help it, and screamed at the monkey, "So noisy, so noisy. So annoying, so annoying." Before they finished speaking, they heard two biu-biu sounds, and two flying needles flew out of the forest and pierced the big butts of the two parrots. "Ah, I feel dizzy." The two parrots hummed weakly twice, staggering and falling in the cage. Su Ming was startled, and quickly used his mental power to explore, and found that the vitality of the parrot sisters was still very strong, but they just fainted, so he was relieved. It is estimated that the poachers were afraid that the parrots' cries would scare away the target, so they injected them with anesthetic needles. Su Ming was angry and amused, thinking that these two chatterboxes, "I told you not to scream, but you still screamed, now you feel good." At this moment, the golden monkey squatting on the stone seemed to suddenly sense something. It turned around suddenly, facing the direction of the waterfall, baring its teeth at the waterfall, and yelling violently. "Are you crazy? Why are you yelling at the waterfall?" "No, I understand." A black creature suddenly jumped out from behind the waterfall, grabbed the golden monkey, and pulled it back behind the waterfall like lightning. "What the hell?" Su Ming broke out in a cold sweat. In the glimpse of the creature behind the waterfall just now, he clearly saw that the creature had a big mouthful of interlaced fangs and sharp teeth. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 118. An unknown monster suddenly appeared from behind the waterfall, bit the golden monkey in one bite, and quickly hid behind the waterfall. Su Ming suddenly realized that it was no wonder that the poachers of Boss He sent two groups of people into the water and searched the bottom of the water but still couldn't find the target. That thing was not in the pool at all, but behind the waterfall above the pool. If I guessed correctly, there must be a cave or a space behind the waterfall for shelter. That thing has been hiding behind the waterfall. It is actually very close to the poachers, only separated by a waterfall. Could it be a giant python? Su Ming suddenly recalled a horror movie called Anaconda in his mind. In the movie, humans were chased by a mutant python and hid behind the waterfall. But this time it was the other way around. The thing was hiding behind the waterfall, and the poachers were outside the waterfall. If it was really a mutant giant python several dozen meters long, it might really be worth millions of dollars. However, according to Su Ming's common sense, a python cannot grow to dozens of meters. 10 meters is already through the sky. Even with his current mental strength level, it will take several years to slowly nourish an adult python. However, it is unlikely to grow to dozens of meters. Quantitative change will inevitably lead to qualitative change. If there is really a python dozens of meters long behind the waterfall, these few people may not be able to deal with it. Even with guns. There was no time to think about anything. After the golden monkey was caught, a shrill scream sounded behind the waterfall, and then there was no movement. "Surround it! Surround it!" 6 poachers ran out of the opposite forest quickly, rushed to the edge of the pool with guns, formed a semicircle, raised their rifles in the direction of the waterfall, and surrounded the pool. The sudden appearance of the water monsters surprised not only Su-ming, but also the poachers were inexplicably excited. Even the voices of their voices unconsciously became much louder, allowing Su-ming to hear clearly. "Boss he, what is this? Is it what the employer wants?" The poacher pointed his gun at the waterfall with a look of progress, but asked the leader Boss he loudly. Boss he's answer was unexpected. He said loudly, "Maybe, everyone be careful. Catch them alive." Su-ming was stunned when he heard them talking. It turned out that these people didn't know what their goal was. Could it be that they found this place based on a strange water sample, and then caught any strange animals they saw? This employer is too unreliable. Is it that he has too much money to burn and took out more than $1 million to play? Beside the pool, Boss he had found a stick with the thickness of a calf and more than 1 meter long in his equipment. He shook his hand, and the stick came out again. It turned out that it was something similar to a fishing rod, which was made up of pieces. Boss he pulled out 7 or 8 sections in a row. The length of the stick was about 10 meters. There was a small ring on the front section. Another poacher took out a wire mesh and put it on the iron ring at the head of the stick. Then, together with Boss he held the end of the stick and poked it hard at the surface of the waterfall, where the water monster shrank. Unexpectedly, the space behind the waterfall seemed to be very large. Boss he and his subordinate poked nothing, but stumbled forward a few steps and almost fell. Boss he refused to give up. After getting up, he pulled out the stick and pulled out a few more sections. The total length of the stick was more than 10 meters long, and he once again plunged into the waterfall. Unexpectedly, the result was still nothing, and the creature behind the waterfall did not show its head, as if it disappeared out of thin air. Boss he poked around that position with a long stick a few times, as if he was measuring the terrain behind the waterfall. This time even Su-ming saw that there should be a hole about 1 meter behind the waterfall. The hole is quite deep. If nothing unexpected happens, the water monster is hiding in the hole. "I want to see what you will do." Su-ming is not in a hurry now. He lies in the fallen leaves and observes the next move of the poachers with interest. For Su-ming, this has become an exciting reality show. As the protagonist of the reality show, the poachers now have 2 choices. The first is to wait for the water monster in the hole to come out on its own initiative, but this choice is purely a matter of luck. Who knows when the guy will come out? The poachers just delivered a big meal to the water monster behind the waterfall. Although this kind of relatively large guy eats a lot, his ability to survive hunger is also quite strong. After eating the golden monkey, it is not uncommon for him to hide in it for a month or 2. Although this is a deep forest, the poachers are doing illegal activities after all. How can they wait here for a month or 2 peacefully? The longer the night, the more dreams there are. Who knows what will happen in a month or 2? The second option is to send someone to risk crossing the waterfall and entering the cave behind. This option is of course the simplest and most direct, but it is too dangerous to do so, almost playing with one's life. Now no one knows what kind of creature the water monster behind the waterfall is, and the hole behind the waterfall is not big. At the same time, at most one person can bend over to go in and out. Even with a gun, safety cannot be guaranteed. In such a small space, shooting is gambling with life. If you are a little unlucky, you don't even need the water monster to do anything, and the ricochet bullet can kill you. If it is really a big python waiting behind, it will definitely be a death for everyone who enters. Otherwise, there is another way: turn around and run away, but the commission of $1.5 million will be wasted. If converted into Chinese currency, each of them can get more than 1 million. At this time, the poachers must make a difficult choice. They discussed for a long time, and finally, driven by money, decided to send people behind the waterfall to find out. Boss, he waved a 56 type rifle and said loudly, "Who is willing to be the first to go in? After the matter is done, you can get an extra $200,000 US." Several poachers looked at each other, and they were a little hesitant. Although their lives were important, the temptation of $200,000 US was equally huge. Su Ming was sure that someone would be willing to earn the $200,000 in the end, and it would definitely not be Boss He. As expected, a few minutes later, a poacher stood up. "Boss He, I'll go, but let's make a deal. I'll take an extra 200,000, not a penny less." The man who stood up was not the strong man De Xiong, but the skinny Jian Lao Er who complained the most on the road. "Okay." Boss He nodded, pulled out a pistol from his waist and handed it to Jian Lao Er, and took off the rifle on Jian Lao Er's shoulder, saying, "The buyer wants it alive. If it's dead, the price will be greatly discounted. The rifle is too powerful, you use a pistol. If you can avoid shooting, try not to shoot, it's best to use a knife." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 119. Jian Lao took the pistol and muttered a few words, probably complaining and cursing. In the moment of panic just now, everyone saw clearly that the monster behind the waterfall was as thick as a bucket, with sharp teeth in a big mouth, and the speed was as fast as lightning. In almost the blink of an eye, it dragged the golden monkey into the cave, and the golden monkey lost its life without even a chance to resist. Such a ferocious monster may not be dealt with by a pistol. However, although Jian Lao complained, he knew in his heart that the price of dead animals and living animals was very different. If he brought a few rifles and fired a few shots, he would be safe, but if he killed the monster, it would be worthless. Doing their business is to gamble with your life. If there is no certain risk, why can he earn $200,000 more than others? While talking, the strong man Dakshan had already blown up a small new rubber boat with an air pump. Jian Lao jumped on the rubber boat and slowly paddled towards the waterfall. When he was about 1 meter away from the waterfall, Jian Lao used the paddle to poke behind the waterfall twice and found the location of the cave behind the waterfall. Seeing that there was no movement, he put the pistol on his waist, holding a military dagger in one hand and a thing that looked like an electric baton in the other hand, stood up from the boat, stepped on the big rock where the golden monkey had just stood by the waterfall, gritted his teeth, and dived into the waterfall. A few seconds later, a hand stretched out from behind the waterfall and made a safe gesture to the outside. Su Ming became even more curious. It stands to reason that after Jian Lao rushed into the waterfall, he would meet the monster head-on, but Jian Lao made this gesture, indicating that there was no danger for the time being, which meant that he did not see the monster at all. Judging from this, either the monster had escaped, which was obviously unlikely. The waterfall was surrounded by iron tunnels. Unless the monster could be invisible, it would never disappear in the public eye. Or, there was a very large cave behind the waterfall, so after Jian Lao entered, he could not see the end of the cave at a glance and did not see the monster. The poachers guarding the pool were not idle either. 2 of them were guarding with guns, and the remaining 3 found a large net and skillfully set it up in front of the waterfall cave entrance. No matter what rushed out from inside, it would crash into the net and fall into the trap. After doing all this, everyone stared at the waterfall intently. The water rushed down from a high place, forming a constantly flowing water curtain. The sound of the surging water sounded in the mountains, which made people feel depressed. Every second seemed particularly long. After another 5 or 6 minutes, a gunshot suddenly came from behind the water curtain. The gunshot was extremely dull and echoed, as if it came from a very far place. Immediately afterwards, several more gunshots were heard, getting closer and closer to the cave entrance. The water curtain at the entrance of the cave shook, and a thick black shadow jumped out from behind the water curtain and rushed into the pool with a splash. The poachers at the entrance of the cave had already set up a net and waited for them. The two poachers shouted at the same time, and the big net was shrouded in the dark shadow. The dark shadow was wrapped in the net, making a wow 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 sound. The huge body was like a wicked dragon, struggling and twisting in the pool, splashing water everywhere. He loud shouted, "Drag it up!" The two poachers grabbed the fishing net and pulled the monster to the shore in no time. On the way up, the monster kept turning its body 360 degrees, knocking the pebbles on the shore everywhere, and plowing a small ditch. One poacher was quick-eyed and quick-handed. He picked up the tranquilizer gun and aimed slightly. A burst of anesthetic was shot at the monster through the mesh of the net. The monster jumped a few more times and gradually became motionless. Qian Lao then jumped out from behind the waterfall, holding a pistol in one hand and the golden monkey in the other. However, the golden monkey was limp all over, with its head, limbs, and tail hanging down, motionless, and no one knew whether it was dead or alive. Qian Lao stood on the rubber boat and asked loudly, "Did you catch it?" "Done," Heliada gave Qian Lao a thumbs up, and the other two poachers hurriedly untied the net on the monster, revealing the true form of the monster. Su Ming squinted and looked over, only to see that the monster was blue-black all over, about 2 meters long, with a tail and 4 legs, and a flat round head. It looked a bit like a lizard and a bit like a crocodile, but there were no scales on its body, and it was fleshy. "It's actually a giant salamander," Su Ming was stunned. The giant salamander, also known as the giant salamander, is the largest and most precious amphibian in the world, a national second-level protected animal, and it makes a WAWA sound like a baby crying. Although the giant salamander looks cute and can even cry like a baby, it seems cute, but if you are fooled by its appearance and try to get close to it, you will definitely suffer a great loss. The giant salamander is ferocious by nature and feeds on fish, shrimp, birds, turtles, snakes, and other animals. It has sharp and dense teeth in its mouth. After biting the prey, it is generally difficult for the prey to escape. The hunting method is somewhat similar to that of crocodiles. After discovering the prey, it will lurk around or hide in the cave and wait for the prey to approach. When the prey approaches, it will burst out with amazing speed in an instant, launch a sudden attack, bite the prey and swallow it. A giant salamander over 1 meter long can easily bite off an adult's arm, and its danger level is no less than that of a crocodile. Fortunately, the poachers chose to send people into the cave instead of waiting by the pond. The giant salamander has a strong ability to withstand hunger. An adult giant salamander can survive without eating for 2 or 3 years. If they had waited at the entrance of the cave, it is estimated that everyone would have starved to death, while the giant salamander would still hide in the cave without showing its head. However, Su Ming still found it incomprehensible. While giant salamanders are indeed precious, but they are just precious. They are definitely not worth millions of dollars. Is it because this giant salamander is particularly large? Su Ming thought to himself. The giant salamander is also called longevity fish. Its lifespan is related to water quality. If the water quality is good and there is enough food, it can live for an average of 70 to 80 years. The longest record is more than 120 years old. Therefore, in folk legends, the longer the giant salamander lives, the higher its nutritional value, and it can even treat some terminal illnesses. The giant salamander in front of him, looking from a distance, is almost 2 meters long and has lived for at least 100 years. Could it be that the buyer has a terminal illness and wants to eat the giant salamander to treat the disease? However, just like the legend of becoming a god by riding a fish, no one really believes that one can become a god by riding a fish. Similarly, there is no scientific basis or real-life example to prove that giant salamanders can cure terminal illnesses. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 120. Not only was Su Ming puzzled, but the poachers at the waterhole were also obviously confused. Was the buyer paying such a high price just for this giant salamander? Boss, he suddenly raised his head and asked loudly, "Second brother Qian, what else is behind the water curtain?" Qian Lauer pointed at the waterfall and shouted back, "Boss, something's not right. There is a big cave behind here, and there are many openings on the cave wall. I searched for a long time before I found this giant salamander and took it out." Kicked out? Boss, he was shocked when he heard this. He looked at the other poachers and loudly ordered, "Second Qian, you lead the way. You two, De Xiong, bring your equipment and go in with me to have a look. Yang, Scar, you two stay here outside." Okay, the two poachers guarding the waterhole shook their rifles. Boss, he hesitated for a moment and then added to the two of them, "Be smart, our trip is a big deal. If someone comes, kill them directly. Don't let the news leak out." After saying that, Mr. He and the other two poachers put their equipment on their backs and jumped into the small rubber boat. Together with Mr. Qian, they re-entered the cave behind the waterfall. 4 of the 6 men walked away, taking away most of the guns and equipment, leaving only 2 poachers. Su Ming's heart moved slightly. This was a great time to rescue the macaws and other animals. The 2 men first put the giant salamander into a large cage, and then whispered to each other for a while. One of them sat in the center of the camp with a pistol, guarding the equipment and prey. Another man ran into the woods near the camp with a rifle on his back, climbed into a tree, and hid under the shade of the tree, forming 2 sentry posts, one light and one dark. From this small detail, it can be seen that this is a very experienced poaching group, and they may have received military training. This kind of light and dark sentry post is quite insidious. If someone strays into the mountains and gets lost, and sees a camp with only one person in the camp, he will definitely come up to ask for directions and help. When the time comes, the dark sentry in the tree will shoot first, and the light and dark sentry in the camp will shoot first. Xiao Zhe took advantage of the chaos and pulled out his pistol to take action. No one on the other side could escape. Even if you encounter police, armed police, etc., poachers will not be blamed. Hidden sentries can take the opportunity to make a sneak attack, or fire warning shots to notify accomplices who enter the cave. Su Ming was lying on the other side of the river, having a clear view of the 2 sentries, and almost laughed. If these 2 guys got together honestly and were guarding the camp by the pool with guns, it would take a lot of effort to move them, but they chose to separate themselves and commit suicide. No wonder I am. Just a few minutes later, the secret whistle in the woods suddenly let out a strange ouch sound, and the branches on the side shook wildly. The bright sentry in the camp subconsciously put his hand into his arms, grasped the handle of the pistol, tilted his body, used a large cage as a cover, exposed half of his head, and shouted in the direction of the secret sentry, Yang, what happened? It's okay, damn, I was stung by a wasp. Damn, why is this wasp so poisonous? It hurts me to death. The branches swayed, and Yang, the secret whistle poacher, showed his head behind the treetop and said to the bright whistle, "Bring some mosquito repellent. You're the only one who's bothering you so much. Damn it, why didn't the wasp bite me?" The bright whistle climbed up from behind the cage, rummaged through the equipment for a while, walked into the woods with a bottle of potion, and handed it to the dark whistle in the tree, saying, "This stuff has a strong taste, so use less of it." "I got it, don't be wordy." The whistle in the tree took the potion and applied it on the exposed skin. Ming Xiao walked back to the camp unhurriedly. Not long after, another scream was heard from where the secret whistle was. "Didn't you apply the potion? Why did you get bitten again?" He was stunned, and shouted to the position of the secret whistle, "The old ghost is howling like a wolf, and a few wasps can't bite anyone, so be patient and be careful not to be discovered." The whistler was probably worried about being discovered, so he made no sound this time. The branches around him shook a few times, as if in protest. Ming Xiao glanced sideways over there, and then muttered, When it comes to sharing money, it's more difficult than anyone else to be more active. It's more difficult to do something than to kill you. After saying that, when there was no movement from the secret whistle, he took out a can of beef, pried it open with the knife and started eating. At this time, the poacher named Yang not far away was sitting on a branch with an iron-colored and black-green body. His rifle was hung on his chest, but his hands were hanging by his side. His whole body was stiff, and even one little finger was missing. He couldn't move, his eyes were wide open, full of fear, and his breathing was getting faster and weaker. There were 2 small holes on his wrists and neck, and black blood beads seeped out from the holes. 2 silver snakes swam slowly over his body, along his neck, and back to the treetops. The venom of the Bungara snake is so severe that it ranks among the top 5 snakes. If you don't detoxify immediately after biting, you will definitely die. Even so, it is impossible for an ordinary Bungara snake to bite a person and cause death. The person who is bitten still has to call for help urgently. However, these 2 Bungaras were captured by Hai Dongqing. Under the control of Su Ming, all the venom was injected into Yang's body in one bite. The dose was several times higher than normal. Moreover, the bite of a Bungara snake is not particularly painful. The person who is bitten often feels like being stung by something, not even as painful as a wasp sting. It takes several minutes for the nerves and respiratory system to gradually become paralyzed. Yang leaned against a tree. After being bitten twice by a snake, he thought it was a wasp again. He didn't take it seriously at first. When he realized something was wrong and wanted to call for help, the poison had already taken effect. The toxin paralyzed his nervous system and he couldn't even scream. He used all his strength and finally shook the branch twice to attract the attention of his companions. Unexpectedly, the companions also thought he was stung by a wasp and didn't take it seriously. Yang is still alive now, but he is no different from a dead person. He can't speak or move. He feels paralyzed all over and watches himself die little by little. In the woods opposite, Su Ming estimated that the dark sentry was dead, so he observed the terrain. The camp where the sentry was located was just in the open space between the pond and the woods. The surrounding ground was all pebbles, bare and without any concealment. No matter which direction the animals attacked from, it was difficult to ensure that they would kill the other party before they fired a warning shot. He thought for a moment, tore a few pieces of his clothes, smeared some mud on his face, then stood up and walked out of the woods. As soon as Su Ming appeared, Ming Xiao spotted him and asked cautiously from a distance. "Brother, a few of us classmates went into the mountains to play and got lost." Seeing someone, Su Ming immediately showed an excited and happy expression, rushed out of the woods, waded through the stream and ran towards the camp, unprepared and looking like an inexperienced person.